yaptık? İlk önce IREC'in nasıl çalıştığından bahsettik. Daha sonra sınırda karbon düzenlemesi ve sınırda karbon düzenlemesindeki sertifikaların kullanım alanlarından bahsettik. Ve oradaki farklı uygulamaların farklı sertifikaları nasıl etkilediğinden. Daha sonra hidrojenden bahsettik. Şimdi aslında ilk bölümde bahsettiğimiz hikaye boyunca sorulan sorularda bu vardı. Biz üretimi nasıl garanti ediyoruz? Santrali nasıl kaydediyoruz? İşte ülkelerin koyduğu emisyon ticaret platformları nasıl çalışıyor? Ya da özel gönüllü piyasalardaki kayıtlar nasıl çalışıyor ve güvenilirlik nasıl sağlanıyor? Bunun için IREC'in kayıt sistemini geliştiren Ed Everson'ı davet edeceğim. Ed Everson'ın şöyle bir önemli özelliği de var. Kendisi 2005-2007 dönemleri arasında Türkiye'deki enerji piyasasının özelleşmesinde de danışman olarak yer almış. Bizim elektrik piyasası bilir, kırmızı ekrana hakim de birisi. Ed şu anda burada. Ed is here. Sorry. So I already introduced that you have been consulting the Turkish privatization period, during the Turkish privatization period.
I apologize. Good afternoon. My job here this afternoon is to try and keep you awake after lunch. Unfortunately, I've got perhaps one of the driest subjects, which is to talk about the registry. But I'll try and keep it interesting for you. Talk a little bit about where we are at the moment and some of our plans for the future, which hopefully you will find interesting. So I'm going to start with a bit of history. So the registry that we have at Evident actually has its history over 20 years ago. And we were developing technology through one of our subsidiaries, which we acquired earlier this year, building registries for guarantees of origin around Europe. And we created some of the first registries in Europe over 20 years ago. And it's really important to have that understanding of how the markets have developed and why we are doing what we are doing, why the registries are designed how they are. And that's very important for our developers. We have in-house architects and designers. All of our developers work alongside people who use the registries. They work alongside issuers and they are supporting registrants, participants, and sometimes beneficiaries as part of their day-to-day work. And this is really important because that understanding of why we are developing registries and what we're trying to achieve helps us ensure that what is inside the registry is fit for purpose. So we don't design an optimized IT system to then create a service based off the IT. We design a service for our customers and then build IT infrastructure to deliver that service. So what is the registry? Number one, it's not a trading place. It's not a marketplace. It is the single source of truth for who owns which asset. Every power plant that we work with for IREC for electricity is registered on the registry. Every time certificates are issued, that's recorded in the registry. When ownership changes, that is recorded in the registry. And it is central that this is both effective and transparent in how it works so that it can support marketplaces in an independent way. And we're accredited by the IREC Foundation, and that is something that is particularly important for us. So that brings into where our boundaries are. So as a registry, we record ownership. In the same way that in the UK, we have a government authority that records the ownership of motor vehicles, but it doesn't get involved in the trade. And we operate that same function for IRECs. Marketplaces and bilateral trades between sellers, they are outside of what we do, but we work with them and we provide them the infrastructure so that they can provide those services to you. I'm going to run briefly through what we do within the registry. So For registration, registrants have to provide a wide range of information, and this is about ensuring that the issuer is absolutely certain that when they register a device, it really is what it says it is. Now, this might seem a very simple process, but there are some really important checks that happen, and sometimes we do find that things are not what a registrant might be claiming. So, for example, we had somebody submit evidence for a wind farm which they were claiming to be in India, and the photographs provided were GPS tagged to a wind farm in Vietnam. And what we do within the registry is check all of that information. We have people doing the checking, and we have automated checks within the system. But we still rely a lot on people doing the checks. One of the reasons for that is we are working with over 500 different forms of evidence. And dealing with these different forms of evidence from around the world, we've looked at automation, we've looked at artificial intelligence, and technology is not there yet to do that. Unlike many of the registries in Europe where they've got access to digital data, we're working in environments that have over 60 different legislative arrangements. Behind that, you've got different types of metering, you've got different ways of providing evidence. All of that has to be accommodated within a single registry. When it comes to transferring certificates, we try and keep that as simple as possible. So all the complexity behind, that's what we manage within our systems, and that's what issuers manage on behalf of registrants. So that by the time it gets to traders, we're producing clear, simple, verified information that allows people to transfer certificates with a clear understanding of what it is they're transferring, where, when it was generated, what technology was used, who has been involved in auditing that information. And then when it comes to the end customers, we provide simple, clear, transparent information with a full audit trail behind it. Every single redemption can be uniquely traced back to the point of origin through that issue event to the registration and all of the information behind that. But we try and do this in a cost-effective way. We've looked at methodologies that are used in carbon markets, for example, where the cost of accreditation and registration can be quite expensive. We've looked at how we can do this around the world and keep it cost effective, keep the cost down for the user. So we use public information, we use government records, we use satellite imagery, and we ensure that we have metered information that can be trusted. And this is where we start to get a bit more interesting, is what we provide through the registry, and particularly for Photon, what they've innovated with the Photon platform. The registry is designed with APIs that allow organisations to create additional services beyond what the registry is. We focus on what we do best, which is the registry function. We are not trying to build marketplaces, we are not trying to build exchanges, we are not trying to build complex data portals. We focus on what we do and allow other people to link in with that trusted source of data and create innovation from what we do. And that is a key part of our philosophy, not to be everything, but to support everyone. And if people have solutions that they want to develop that need the data that we have, then our first response is, how can we enable that? We focus on best practice. Trust in this information is critical because it's information that you can't easily see. Now, whilst we have access to the electronic records from meters or from somebody having gone around and read a meter manually and providing photographic evidence or other sources, for traders and end customers, you have to have trust that the whole process from the original point of registration through to the claim at the end is robust. So when we look at the registration of a project, it's not just that somebody says, I've got this power project, I want to register it. We have to have evidence that they really have the rights to register that product, that they haven't sold those rights to another party. So we have strict legal compliance, we have audit teams that look at know your customer checks, that dig into every single organisation that is registered onto the registry to make sure that we only work with trusted parties. When we start looking at what are we doing with the registry, and you're the first people to find out the date for the next stage of our release. Next week, we are launching the results of a one-year pilot program that we did with Google. And although it's technically what we consider a minor update to the registry, it's a landmark for functionality. And what that is granular certification. So moving away from 1 megawatt hour, moving away from certificates that might be issued that cover a year or a month, and having the ability to issue certificates down to any time interval. Now, for us, it's far more complex than perhaps in Europe or North America or a single country where they might be working with a settlement period of 1 hour or half an hour or 15 minutes, and their registry only needs to cover that one option for settlement period. We work around the world, so we have to cover every possibility for settlement period. So we've created, sorry, can you just pop back? So we've created certificates that can move down to a watt-hour resolution, and that complies with the emerging energy tag standard for granular certificates. So for our beneficiaries who might have smaller sites where a 1 megawatt hour certificate is too large or it doesn't fit with how they want to report, we will be enabling watt-hour certification. And that will apply to every certificate that is already issued in the market as well. So whatever has been issued, as of next week, we will be able to break that down into smaller units for customers. When it comes to having time codes on certificates for what time period they were issued, the registry will support that, but it is complex. Every market is different. Access to data in those markets is also challenging in many of those markets. So very few certificates at the beginning will have hourly data or half-hourly data. But the software will support it, and as we get access to more data sources, as demand drives organisations to ensure that data becomes available to us, we are prepared to bring that in. The time coding data, at the moment we're only going to enable that through the API for organisations who are transacting directly on our APIs. And the reason for that is that through the user interface, it's particularly complex to deal with potentially thousands of data items. But that is something that we will provide next year. Okay. And this comes onto our timeline and how we are moving with our registry development over the next year. So next week, we have what we're calling a hybrid certificate, which can be both granular and as it is at the moment. Later this year, we've got the registry for sea capsule, which is carbon certification, and Travis will talk about that a little bit later for the pilot for what is happening there. Early next year, the registry is being further expanded to handle sustainable aviation fuel in a pilot. And then in the first quarter of next year, we've got a major upgrade to our infrastructure. And we plan on having major upgrades every 18 to 24 months. Following that, there will be a hydrogen registry. Jared has already mentioned the work that's happening on hydrogen certification. And then coming into the sort of later part of next year, quarter two, we're looking at functionality for storage and properly recording stored energy through battery units, potentially pump storage, other forms of electricity storage. Another key thing that's coming out at the same time is a portal for beneficiaries. At the moment, end customers mainly work through participants who manage the accounts on their behalf and provide them with a certificate that they can then validate against the registry. In Q2 next year, we will be providing functionality that beneficiaries will have their own access into the registry. They can see what has been done on their behalf by any organisation that is working for them. If they want to work with multiple participants, that can all be brought together in one place. And we want to have ideas from beneficiaries for what they want for their reporting. And this is a key area where we're different than some of the European registries. And I'll come on to that a little bit later. Around the same time as we do that, we will be integrating all of our various registries into a single login environment, so that organisations that are working across multiple products can just go to one place and access the certification that they have under IREC for electricity, under C capsule for carbon, under MIQ, which is our natural gas certification, for hydrogen, aviation fuel, and other products. And then we've got some interesting plans that we're planning for this time next year in advance of the next COP. I can't tell you anything about those, but there will be news on that coming out probably in about 6 months' time. Okay. So the major upgrade that we've got planned for Q1 next year is part of what we call our 1824 review cycle. And it's a key thing for how we build registries within Evident. And it's one of the advantages we have of being an independent service provider, not operating under direct contract to a government and having to tender and working under a limited budget. We continually invest in our registry and our infrastructure. And every 18 to 24 months, we take a blank piece of paper, we look at everything that we're doing, all of the technology we use, and we start again. What is the best way to do this? And that has some really important benefits for what our users receive as part of our service. Our developers always know why things have been developed, how they've been developed, because we're always redeveloping. We have a team that only works on registry development. It's all they do. And that understanding means that when we get requests for new functionality, our developers can very rapidly respond to those requests with a well-considered, well-understood method for delivering these additional services. The beneficiary portal that I mentioned, it's a first step along what we want to do to open out access to IREC for electricity and other products for end customers and beneficiaries. When we started with IREC around 8 years ago, it was mainly the large corporations who were looking at certification around the globe. Those organisations are now starting to push this through their supply chain, right down to very small micro enterprises in their supply chain. And some of the large corporates that we work with now have it as a contractual requirement that their supply chain has to use IREC. So we need features that support that functionality for smaller organisations, but we also need features where that supply chain can report back, so that BMW, for example, can see the information right through their supply chain. But that has to be done securely, with every organisation in that supply chain agreeing to data being made available. So it's a complex process. It is legally challenging as well. So we've got, a very good legal team and legal advisors working on how we provide that information through that is being requested. Two other areas are looking at labelling, and redemption authorities, and they're linked with each other. So at the moment, many organisations report to RE100, and IREC is globally accepted by RE100. But RE100 has specific requirements. So not every IREC might be accepted in every country. So what we are doing is allowing organisations to build a portfolio. This is what I want to submit. And then organisations like RE100, Eco Energy, maybe government authorities, any organisation that wants to validate somebody's report will be able to have secure access to the registry, which the participant or the beneficiary has to enable that allows these reports to be made and authorities to have a direct means of validating that through to the single point of truth that we have at registration and issuing. Thank you. The other area that's coming out slightly later is storage. And this is an area that is growing rapidly, part of it being driven by granular certification and some of the large corporates and the data centers recognizing that if they want to be 24 hours a day renewable energy, they need to look at storage as a mechanism for achieving that and having a robust means that that storage is traceable back to renewable electricity. So we're working with the foundation at the moment on the principles for how storage will be put into the legislation over the next couple of months, and then implementing that into the registry so that energy from storage still has a clear, unique trace back to the original point of electricity generation. Thank you. The unified registry, that moves IREC for electricity, which is in around 60 countries and growing at the moment, alongside some of the other services that we operate that are provided globally. So IREC for electricity is not currently inside Europe or North America, where you have guarantee of origin and regs. But some of our other services that run through the registry will have a global footprint and be available in any country. So carbon removals, we're seeing a lot of activity in North America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and parts of Asia. MIQ, which is for low methane natural gas, is predominantly at the moment in North America, moving into Europe and the Middle East over the next 6 months. Hydrogen will be a global certification standard, again designed so that we don't say what is green, what is blue. We say this is the impact of the hydrogen that is being certified, and we allow those who want to consume that hydrogen to decide what meets their purchasing criteria. So if a government, such as one of the European governments, says this is our requirement for hydrogen, we've got an evidence chain that demonstrates whether or not hydrogen is compliant with that requirement. I think one of the key things for us is the relationship with the foundation. The independent assessment of quality, and part of our accreditation with the foundation and being an accredited registry is that they review every part of what we do and challenge our work and provide expert advice on things that we might want to do better, we might want to do differently. They look at our design processes, our management structures, how we coordinate our development. They look at the operation of the registry, the protocols that we have for security, disaster recovery, look at our maintenance. And separately from that, at Evident, we also submit to an independent third party that does all of those checks and more. And it's really important for us that what we do is absolutely bulletproof, because what we provide as a service has to be bulletproof. Unlike electricity, where reconciliation can take place for physical electricity over a year, maybe 2 years, and people can argue about who had which electricity, ultimately that comes down to somebody agreeing that this organisation owes another organisation some money for electricity. When it comes to certificates like IREC, once it's issued, that's it. So it has to be right first time. Once it's transferred, that's it. It has to be right. So our systems are designed with far more resilience than energy trading systems, because we have to be certain that what happens is correct first time, every time. Thank you. This comes back to our developer team. I think I've touched on this, and a key thing though is only registries. And by focusing on registries, we can ensure that we provide the best possible service. Okay. With our API framework, we work with marketplaces such as the Photon platform. There are exchanges that are being looked at to link in as well. We can facilitate company dashboards. We work with data providers at the issuing side who can interface in so that we've got access to digital data. We work with labellers such as RE100 or Eco Energy. But the most important aspect for us is to work with innovators. Unlike most of the registries in North America and under the AIB standard, we're not constrained by what we had to submit for a tender, what we have to provide for an individual country. So we have an open infrastructure, it's not closed. And when it comes to working with other organisations, we look for partners, not competitors. Anybody that wants to provide a service in this space is a potential partner for us. There are many organisations that we now work with as partners who 4 or 5 years ago saw themselves as competitors. But by having an open, transparent structure, by giving everybody the same contract, we ensure not just that everybody is treated equally, but everybody has that trust in the transparency of what we do. And we want to be an enabler. We don't want to inhibit innovation. We want to allow other organisations who have brilliant ideas to bring them to market, and we will support them. But it has to be through a quality-first approach, and that comes back to the accreditation that we have under the foundation, and those platforms, marketplaces, others who integrate with our registry go through a similar accreditation process with the foundation. And that is to ensure that whatever you see with an IREC brand marked against it has been signed off by the foundation and can be trusted. So, thank you very much.
Evet, çok teşekkür ederiz. Burada aramızda tabii Evident kullananlarımız var. Sormak istediğiniz kritik sorular varsa Ed'e iletebiliriz şu anda. They're always complaining on some stuff, so I asked if they want to mention now, but I hear nothing, so.
I'm sure my email will be full when I get back to
En önemli noktalarından bir tanesi şu, sektörde çok fazla şey değişiyor. Çok fazla yeni aslında inovatif fikir doğuyor. İşte bir tanesi Photon platformuydu. Daha sonra biz başka şeyler düşündük. Kendi bölgesindeki lisanssız üretim tesislerine acaba bir platform kurabilir mi? İşte bir başka şirket. Bunların hepsini tartışıp Evident'e götürüp Evident'in API'lerini açık kaynak kullanabilmek gerçekten çok büyük bir avantaj. Bu da bence sektördeki diğer sertifika programlarından ayrıca en çok ayıran şeylerden bir tanesi. Bunu vurgulamak için zaten Ed'i çağırdık. En son yapacağımız tartışmada da bundan birazcık daha bahsedeceğiz. Thank you again, Ed.